Lagos City, it's back to work. It's January the 6th. The holidays are over. Traffic is back. It's Smooth 98.1 FM. It's Business Express. I am Rotus. Good morning to you all. I am joined by a representative from ARM, our ever reliable Janet. Good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Richard.
Good to have you in here. Good to have you in here. So
Thank you for
Lagos,
having me.
you know the drill. Like Johnny, do send your messages to 0809-444-0981. Also, we are streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth91fm. Remember, we got the website, all right? www.smooth91.fm. Follow us on Twitter at smooth91fm. Let us begin. Let us begin. All right. So, Janet, there's I don't know if it's World War III, but President Trump ordered an airstrike, Abi, on a particular area in Iraq. They killed a big time, I think it's the number 2 man in Iran, Mr. General Soleimani, and it's led to all sorts of retaliations. But one of the things that concerns us, Janet, is oil prices.
Of course.
Oil prices jumped.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I've told people in the past that Nigeria should pray for conflict in the Middle East because it increases oil for us. But please go ahead.
Yeah.
What do we see?
Just a quick background to that would be, all of this just goes back to the Iran nuclear deal. That was, that the US more or less yanked off. It started from November last year. That's 2018 rather, and then the waivers were taken off in May in 2019. And then so all of that has just that's already increased. I mean, after that Iran deal, we started to see some attacks at the Strait of Hormuz. That's like a path where tankers would usually pass to. It's a major pathway. And then we've actually seen some feedback, at least some consequence of all of that nuclear deal. And all of this is just a huge escalation of all of that. So all of this, so first off, there was an attack on a U.S. Citizen, and then the U.S. actually retaliated. I mean, that was last week. That was the weekend before.
Like a contractor died or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. So there was an attack on on the U.S. embassy, and there was there was a missile attack by the U.S. And then that was also retaliated because in Iraq there was now some attacks on the U.S. embassy.
Right.
And then the U.S. responded to all of this by killing this Iran official that was in Baghdad, that's in Iraq. So all of that just led to this jump in high prices. You would recall the attack on the Saudi Arabia tankers.
Yes.
This was actually, we saw prices jump to the levels that we saw at that particular time, $69.19 a barrel. At the time, again, we're already saying that how all of this jump in oil prices just puts us in better positions. It's like, okay, sorry for them, but good for us.
Right.
So it's just good for our oil prices. Our production is stable. And then it definitely just increases a bull case for 2020.
Okay.
At least from EIA's last report, their oil forecast was at $61. That was actually increased. Previously it was 60. It was increased to 61. Especially after the Saudi attack. So just for us as well, we're also along that not too far from that, but it just increases a bull case scenario. But then the thing about all these attacks is it's not as if you're seeing something fundamentally happen. As far as oil fundamentals are concerned, like demand, supply, things are still relatively stable. Except and believe when the attacks on the U.S. embassy went on the previous weekend, we saw that they actually shut off their production for just briefly.
Right.
But then it also just paints a picture of what to expect going into 2020. More so because what instigated this whole World War III was a statement by the Iraq leadership where they've said they're going to retaliate on the U.S. government.
Right.
Over the weekend, the Iran's representatives have also mentioned that they actually that you can expect them not to comply to the nuclear deal, where the uranium production would actually go off the roof as well. So all of this, and then Trump also tweeting, and then also talking about how if there's any attack on any U.S. citizen, they can expect
retaliate with more missiles.
So it's just not stable. And then even if you don't see anything happen with fundamentals, which is where ideally you'd expect maybe demand supply to dictate prices. But then all of this just tends to move sentiment and then move markets, and then just puts a it just increases the bar for oil prices next year. Yeah.
Okay. Now we have a message here from Ben, and he's looking at the flip side of this. Of course, you look at one side, revenues increase, but he's looking at the other side. It says, "Good morning, Rotus and crew. Considering subsidy payments by the government and increase in global oil prices, is Nigeria better off?" So there's also that case, of course, of how much we pay importing refined fuel into the country, and then so I mean, if you look at that, there's we have to look at that side.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're looking at that side. Well, yeah, it's good we look at that angle, but then where we're actually more the direct impact for us, because like you mentioned, we have that direct sale, direct purchase
right
thing going on, so we may not really, at least I agree with that, because as oil prices go higher, as the crude oil prices start to see the refined oils also react, like the gasoline and stuff.
Right.
So so it just puts that, but I believe the more direct impact that we have
is on the revenue side.
On the revenue side,
Right.
which is actually good for us, $69. And just to mention, average for 2018 was 64.
Okay.
Sorry, for 2019 was $64 a barrel. That's 4.21. So I mean, like I mentioned, forecast was actually projected, to go lower. But if you see all of this escalation actually play forth, so some of the risk you can expect is, like I mentioned, after the nuclear deal was, taken off, we saw how the Strait of Hormuz, the path that all shippers, there were some attacks from some people, that were suspected to be Iran guys. So we can expect more of that, I mean, and then also just the fact that, perhaps they could shut down their own production. Currently, yes, Iran was already, like I mentioned, they're already sanctioned, so there's limits to how much they can reduce their production. But the likes of Iraq are still like the third or second largest in OPEC. So if we have to see that escalation in Iraq as well, that also puts fundamentals, at risk. But like I mentioned, even, putting fundamentals on the back seat, and then you see how people react to all of this, oil prices just tend to go up.
Thank you for that. It's only January. It is only January, and 2020 is already taken off with lots of with conflict. All right, Prince here. I want to talk on Nigeria's revenues as far as what oil has meant to us in the last year compared to prior. So 1 second, let's go to Prince's message here. Prince said this oil rise and conflict issues relates to a Yoruba proverb that says, if there's blood in the mouth of a rabbit, there won't be pepper in the mouth of a man. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Valentine even reacted. Okay. Our oil revenues, yes, as far as what we've been bringing in, just for our listeners, it's actually been coming down a bit over the last few years. Yeah, can we just touch on that for a couple seconds?
So I mean, when you look at proportion of oil revenues, oil inflows to total CBN inflows, yes, we have seen that kind of moderate. I believe the last time it was about 30% of total oil inflows, of total CBN inflows.
Yes.
And then just a little bit below that for total inflows as well. But then what you'd also look at is what are the other the other channels that come, where, like, what are the other flows for FX into the CPN, some coffers. You're looking at capital importation, you're looking at invisibles, and then some other autonomous sources, and all of this other factors actually also, they're also relying, they're more or less, they're exogenous factors.
Right,
I mentioned.
right.
You get, so just like oil prices. So if there's any reaction, if there's anything negative happening to our oil prices, we can see that also impact some of those other lines. But then it's not to mention that, I mean, it's almost understandable considering how low prices have gotten compared to perhaps pre 2015 or pre 2014 era,
right?
Where we had $100 oil, but now, I mean, yes, considering all of that, production revenues, in value terms, could be lower, and then proportion of total that could also be lower. But then, like I mentioned, some of these other streams of flows for FX are actually quite dependent. So it's like oil prices is just still the foundation.
All right. Okay. Well, we need to move to power. But one quick message here from Yinka. It says, rather than people to start trending World War III, was trending all over Twitter yesterday and the day before. I think Gulf War Part 2 is better. Now, coming back home, Rotus, please use your good office on Business Express to help beg our politicians to keep their mouths shut and not to tweet or take sides in this current Iran-US beef. Let's just ramp up production and make the most we can out of it. Remember, we've still got a high debt. Okay, Yinka, duly noted. All right, so we move to power, and Benga Kamul, let me get to his message because this sets us off on a good path to discuss tariffs going up. It says, Rotus, good morning. Janet, good morning. Is it fair for electricity tariffs to be increased while there is no commensurate improvement in power supply? That's from Benga Kamul. So let's kick off with Benga's message there. The news, of course, was that NERC it has decided to place an order. That's the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Yeah, over the weekend they announced that tariffs are now supposed to increase. Now I was a little confused because I read somewhere it was January 1st, but then I also read that it's going to be in April. So help us out. What's happening?
Okay, so I mean, all of this, what I call it, I mean, this was actually news of this actually started from late last year.
Okay.
Where they actually mentioned that there was some rumor because we didn't see anything on the NERC
And your official,
exactly.
right?
So it was just more or less news. But now it's been confirmed. It's on the NERC. And what you mentioned about the tariff increases, so there's different variations to these things. There's the one for the Eco discos, the ones for the Ikeja discos,
okay.
And all of that. And then, we're seeing some, significant increase in tariffs, like you mentioned. And then the effective dates, across all of these discos is January 1st.
Okay.
But then it said that it won't, impact end users until April 2019, and then what that means is, and what's even stated in the document is the government is going to make up for that gap.
Okay.
That's still, at least between January and April before end users more or less take off, with paying all of the full tariff fees and all of that. But
okay.
Just to his question, really you'd recall from last year, from even perhaps like 2 years back, we've heard about how discos are actually closing down. Many of them are talking about how unprofitable the business has gotten. Some of the variables that have been used in computing these micro tariffs have changed. Like you have to update your from what was published, they had to update inflation, had to update gas prices, had to update the Celtic currency. The exchange rate was increased from like 306 naira dollar to 310. So all of that's just translated to these new tariffs that have been announced. So basically, I mean that's basically it. And then from April next year we start to see this actually impact us in particular. But for
April
us in
2021 or 2020?
20.
Yeah, you're still in 2019.
Oh, sorry,
Okay,
2020.
Yes, okay.
From April 2020. So I mean, where you see that filtered to is inflation, of course.
Yeah.
So for on average for 2019, we estimate that it to be at around 11.4%.
Okay.
And then from this year, before this, we already expected that this would hold, but we expected that it would be more effective from the second half of the year in 2020. And then we had estimated around 13.8 actually. So now just within the borders of 13.5 to 14.5%. But I mean, now that it's coming in at least a little sooner, from April, we can expect some upside risk, or just some upside to that, above that 13.8.
Okay.
So,
Now, another thing I want to touch on here is whether these tariffs are high enough. And please, nobody should come after me. These are just numbers here, because in one of the stories I was like, okay, generation cost is 23 naira per kilowatt hour, transmission cost is 7 naira 80 kobo, then another transmission admin cost is like 3 naira 90 kobo. So it comes to about 34 naira 70 kobo per kilowatt hour. But in some areas they're going from like 19 naira per kilowatt hour to maybe 23, 24. Some of these increases are still under this cost. So there's variations, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess what I'm asking is, whether this should be high, but maybe they're doing this gradually, I guess, in different phases.
Okay, so it's good you mentioned that, because what we've actually seen is, so there's even different categories for the consumers. For the residentials, you have R1, R2, R3. You're talking about those that have 2 phases, 3 phases.
Okay.
For industrial or for commercial businesses as well, there's different categories as well. So the tariffs actually vary across board. But then so it can be it can be proportionally that can
spread
be
out
across the different consumers. And then they also mentioned that it's actually subject to more reviews, at least coming, at least the next review likely, like April 2021, according to the documents. So they could just review it again if that's necessary. But I believe this huge leap, at least the extent of increase that we're seeing now is just at least just to put the discourse in better
position, right?
And then also just to mention the fact that aside the increased tariffs, there's also some regulation as to how the discourse have to remit some of these payments that they get, so that the other people behind that, like you're talking about the Gencos, the Transcos, also and MBET, their relations with MBET as well.
Yeah.
As to how much they're actually expected to remit to some of these other organizations behind them. So all of that just to improve efficiency in that.
Hey, wow, we're all here. We'll see whether this will improve. Okay, Ifeanyi from Aba is a big fan of you. Says he loves your analysis and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, Ifeanyi is also saying that he heard NERC has denied that the tariffs are going up. It's on their website, so Ifeanyi is there. It's live and direct. Okay, we've got a couple investment questions here. Olubenga says, Rotus, have you heard of Overwood Investment? Yeah. I haven't gone into it though. It's Dr. Tayo Oyedeji. You guys can follow him on Twitter, Tayo Oye. But that's an investment thing he started. I haven't really gotten into what that's about, but I'll do it as homework and I'll get back to you on that. But I think it involves investing in securities overseas. It's a mix of investments here in Nigeria and they're overseas. And then Ayodeji is asking about farm crowd. See, I knew this was going to happen with yields being so low. Fixed income is going down. Stock market is doing well. People are now turning towards the farm investments. Again, I know Farm Crowding and Thrive Invest. Those have been the two most popular ones, yeah. But I still haven't. Yeah, Valentine is thumbs up. He's Valentine is affirming that. I still haven't. Look, I've been a little skeptical on the farming investments. Again, you gotta go out there and see the farms, see how well they're doing. If floods are happening and herdsmen issues are happening, that can affect your investment, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I've heard of Farm Crowd, you heard of Thrive Invest. There's so many of them. Please be careful, huh? Please be careful with the farming investments. Okay, this one is a touchy one, Janet, and we don't really have much information here, but UBA was trending over the weekend, and I think this is in regards to, okay, so the news that came out, it came out from Nairametrics, right? The headline is UBA recruits 4,000 new staff, promotes over 5,000 staff members, increases salaries by 170%, right? It was from Nairametrics, again, put that out there, and I think it's also on UBA's executives, some of them were quoted on this. However, the flip side is that, in fact, Nairametrics actually modified, they put out another story because there are some anecdotes, and we have to stress that these are anecdotes from people on Twitter saying that they have relatives and so on who had been let go. So there were layoffs attached, that the company engaged in layoffs. And so some folks are saying this headline wasn't very accurate because they didn't actually state if the layoffs took place. So then Nairametrics came back with a second headline: promotions, layoffs as UBA affects corporate right sizing. So again, and we're talking downstairs, we don't really have much info here, but yeah, what where do you see all this with what's...
So like you mentioned, it's hard to actually speak on this because there's no confirmed details or the likes, but I believe, I mean, all of this, I wouldn't say it's not new. All of this things about the labor, how to treat your labor, your staff, and all of that. So it's within their own coffers. I believe, what they'll want to consider is probably, at least as a business person, just as a business person thinking from their perspective, it's probably looking at their operating costs and then making sure there's more effectiveness in there. But then there's also the other social side of things where people are actually affected. Their livelihood is actually, at risk here. So, but then, like I mentioned, there's no details.
So we'll have to wait and see.
Exactly. But I mean,
All right, let's go to the... I've just touched on that because we're going into the banks now. Are we... Valentine, already? Wow, I lost track of time. I'm so okay. We're supposed to go into the loan deposit ratio. The CBN has again debited the banks about 650 billion. Lagos. We'll go into that tomorrow. Kenneth, real quick, let me end on this. There is no problem on the increase of electricity tariff, but discos must be mandated to give prepaid meters to all before any increase. Thank you for that, Kenneth. We'll leave it there. Janet from ARM, thank you so much for joining us. Lagos, I will catch you again tomorrow on Business Express. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all your messages.
Wow. I lost. Yo.